Everyone knows the real best album of '86 is the Top Gun soundtrack.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Listography. Jason, Joe, and Kramzer here, and it is 1986, into the mid-80s, into the thick of the 80s now. In 1986, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame holds its first ever induction ceremony. December of '86, the Smiths play their final show. Columbia drops Johnny Cash after 28 years on the label. Worldwide, the biggest selling album of the year is Madonna's True Blue, which goes number 1 in 28 countries. Here in the US, though, the biggest selling album of the year is the debut album by Whitney Houston. Top songs of the year are That's What Friends Are For by Dionne Warwick and Friends, Say You, Say Me by Lionel Richie, I Miss You by Climax, On My Own by Patti LaBelle and Michael McDonald, and Broken Wings by Mr. Mister. You start to see some bands that are going to make waves in the 90s. You've got the Afghan Whigs forming, Buffalo Tom, Cowboy Junkies, the Lemonheads, No Doubt, Sebadoh, and of course, the Clarks.
Oh, shut up.
You guys want to get into your lists? What do you got?
All right, '86, kind of a weaker year for me. Not a lot of depth. Some decent stuff at the top. I do have some classic monumental albums here, that some of which Jason alluded to, that didn't really don't really tickle my fancy. Expecting maybe Master of Puppets to show up on a certain list of one of us, but didn't sniff my list. I had 7 in contention. The 2 I had to cut were Brotherhood by New Order and then Life's Rich Pageant by R.E.M. Pretty big year for me personally as far as this series goes, because it's going to have my first installment of a non-rock album. I've got a pretty good classic hip-hop album, Raising Hell by Run DMC. It's one that's got all of the great Run DMC songs, big hits, Walk This Way, and It's Tricky and all of that. I've also got a pretty cool obscure experimental album by Arthur Russell called World of Echo. If you don't know this album, it's really inventive and unique. It's definitely not for everybody. Joe can probably stay away from it. But had I said that about Kate Bush 10 years ago, he would have missed out. So maybe give it a shot, buddy. He kind of sounds like Nick Drake, and this album is kind of like an 80s Pink Moon to me, in sort of like this avant-garde kind of way. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching with that, but it's a really good record. And then my other 2 finalists are going to be The Queen is Dead by the Smiths and Get Close by Pretenders. But runaway winner for me, one of my favorite albums of all time, is going to be So by Peter Gabriel. One of these days, we're going to have to talk about certain terminology, especially when it comes to genre and styles within the rock or, pop or pop rock realm, because everyone talks about this being a pop art album, which I totally agree with. And this is the first album that comes to mind. Can't really put my finger on it. It's sort of this blend and critique of commercialism while kind of also celebrating it. And that's exactly what this album is. It's really exotic and mainstream at the same time. It's highly artistic, but again, has those commercial elements. A lot of like digitalization and modern sounds coming in with synthesizers. Not as much, I think, on his earlier stuff. It's definitely a more straightforward pop record as far as the structures of the song go, which make it really beautiful and melodic and catchy at times. And to me, the most impressive thing about this sonically are the drums. But who the hell do you give credit to on this? There's about 6 different drummers that are credited on this album electronically. We've talked before on this channel how Stuart Copeland just does the hi-hat on one track. But the drums and the atmosphere that the drums create on this record are just sensational. Production overall is just insanely good. And then I really love the wide range of emotions all over this album. It's really complex and sophisticated all the way through, but you get really freeing, liberating stuff like Red Rain and That Voice Again. You get really cold, dense, like introspective stuff like Mercy Street and Don't Give Up. Really bright, fun, poppy stuff like Sledgehammer and Big Time. And then obviously one of the great album closers ever, Within Your Eyes, one of the all-time great love songs. And it's just, every song has something to say and like a little bit more depth to it than you realize, but it's just got all of these different complex elements and kind of takes you on a roller coaster of emotion. And I just think it's a very, very amazing record. Maybe like the Pet Sounds of the 80s, just because of the studio work that it did, and no one can really touch that for me in the 80s. And I think it's just perfect all the way through. There's not a dull moment on me. And his voice sounds great. Nothing to complain about it. This is a top 10 album for me of all time. So by Peter Gabriel.
Yeah, it's a wonderful album. I love that album. It's going to be on my list, which I will get to shortly. But I don't know what you're talking about with saying 86 is a weak year. And I'm kind of surprised Graceland didn't make your list, Graham.
Graceland doesn't do it for me as much. Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like that and So were kind of the peak of the kind of world music. That's kind of Paul Simon and Peter Gabriel really kind of brought that into vogue in the United States with those. Graceland just missed my list. I really like it. There's Blood and Chocolate and King of America by Elvis Costello, both great albums, but both missed my list. Master of Puppets misses my list. Color of Spring by Talk Talk just misses the list. 5150, nope. Tons of stuff for me that I couldn't get on because they're just some classics.
Jason, 5150 make your list? You Hagar loving motherfucker?
You gotta wait and see.
But getting back to my runners up, this one's going to be a little controversial for Judas Priest fans, but I got Turbo on my list. I love it. I love the synths. I love kind of the glam rock-iness of it. I know nobody likes it out there in Judas Priest land, but I think it's great. Out in the Cold is probably my favorite Priest song, so I'm throw it on there. Next runner up, I'm going to go with Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time. Of the three classic kind of metal albums, Master of Puppets left off, kind of surprised me as well, but Somewhere in Time, underrated gem in Iron Maiden's catalog. No weak tracks on this, great guitar, love it. I got Parade by Prince, of course. Nice rebound after Around the World, which is pretty uneven. And this one, it's not quite Purple Rain, but Mountains, Kiss, Another Love, A Hole in Your Head are all awesome. A lot of funk on this album. Another great one from Prince. And my first runner-up is going to be So by Peter Gabriel. It's the first CD I ever owned. It's just phenomenal across the board. When I was learning bass, I played a bunch of songs on this album. Tony Levin from King Crimson plays bass. And on Big Time, he plays bass with just drumsticks attached to his fingers. And I think 3 strings on the bass. Gives it that really kind of metallic sound. My bass teacher, Evan Handyside, told me that, so shout out to him. He's probably not watching, but what the hell. But my number one is going to be The Queen is Dead by the Smiths. Probably my favorite Brit pop, rock, whatever album of the 80s. It's kind of emo. It's kind of rocking, very funny, Morrissey, great sense of humor, going after the Queen and sort of the power structure in Britain. I think Johnny Marr's guitar playing on this is phenomenal as well. Andy Rourke has a great, big round bass sound, which I love. From The Queen is Dead, Big Mouth Strikes Again, great it just kind of deftly tiptoes through all these genres so well. And it's weird. I like the debut from the Smiths, but it came out in '84, so it didn't make the list. I absolutely hate Meat is Murder. I think it's just dreadful. But this one really kind of packs it in. There's a Light That Never Goes Out. Great emo song. Really loved it kind of growing up as an almost emo teenager. And it's just a phenomenal record. It's my number one in a crowded field of contenders for 1986.
Yeah, I guess you would call it primo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice, actually. Okay. And you were borderline, you walked the line perfectly.
Also on my list, so I got The Queen is Dead. I also got Blood and Chocolate by Elvis Costello, as well as King of America by Elvis Costello, Just on Fire in 1986, 2 of his best albums. If you have seen my listography, you know that King of America is my very favorite album of his. And even though he's won a couple times already in the 80s, a couple other records keep it out of the top spot. I've got So by Peter Gabriel as well. And it's tough to put anything ahead of So because it's just such a well-made record and it sounds so good. I really had to look deep in my soul to decide if I really like this album more than it, but I decided that I do, and my number one album of 1986 is going to be Skylarking by XTC. Really great record. Came at a time in their career where they were sort of, I don't know, floundering a little bit. They paired up with Todd Rundgren. He produced this record. A lot of tension between Andy Partridge and Todd Rundgren during the making of this record. They really did not see eye to eye, but the record still managed to turn out fantastically. Tons of great songs on this. The opening 2 tracks of Summer's Cauldron that leads right into Grass is phenomenal. Earn Enough for Us. That's really super, Supergirl. I just like pretty much every song on it. I think the production's really great. Some of the like soundscape stuff that Rundgren did, they kind of led one song into another, works really well. Yeah, I think it's probably my favorite XTC record. A couple of their early records come close, but yeah, for me, number one of XTC and of 1986.
Joe, thought you would have Slippery When Wet on there.
I mean, I'm not a huge Bon Jovi guy. That's not really my wheelhouse.
I guess that's true. I don't know why I thought that. Never mind.
Yeah, I don't think that really fits me at all.
Sorry, yeah, we don't want to give the impression that Joe is this Bon Jovi loving human being.
No, they were not in contention.
I forgot to mention a couple of my near misses right on the cusp of my list, because I was working with 7 as well and had to cut 2. The 2 that I cut were Guitars, Cadillacs, etc. by Dwight Yoakam, and the self-titled debut from They Might Be Giants.
Was waiting for that one. Really thought that would be on there.
It came close. That was probably my number 6.
No talk for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely stuff from 86 I like, but in like the 4.5 star and up range, this is about all I could come up with. And yeah, Beastie Boys had License to Ill as well. It was a good album.
All right, guys. Well, you know the drill. Leave your favorite records of the year down in the comments. Make sure you hit like on the video. Subscribe if you haven't already yet. Hit the bell to get notifications. And look down in the description to find links to all of our social media. And thanks for watching. We'll see you in 1987.